Hey, everybody, it's Jason McLaren with the Leadership Loading Podcast with my guest today, Anthony Frisina.
Frisina.
Frisina. Anthony has a passion for accessibility and inclusion driven by his community in Hamilton, Ontario. And so, being born with spina bifida, he is privileged to adopt a person-first mentality in his early years and a mindset that embodies his everyday life. That adversity not only builds character, but it reveals it. So, Anthony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we were talking before we started recording. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and what you're up to today?
Absolutely. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, Jason. My name is Anthony Frisina. I'm born in Hamilton, Ontario. Founder of a brand called Above and Beyond. I was born with spina bifida and hydrocephalus, and I was walking with the use of a cane, crutches, and my condition subsequently digressed to the point where at age 12, I had a surgery in 92 with a success rate of 40%. And it was never really a negative. I never really went into this surgery knowing that the percentage was so low that, I could potentially be full out walking following the surgery. Surgery left me using a wheelchair there on after. And it's really not been a negative. It's more of an opportunity to amplify the message of accessibility and inclusion.
Definitely, I think your passion has shown through with everything you're doing. You have your organization and some all the things you're doing on bridging the gaps on inclusivity. And so, how do you see inclusivity as a tool for leadership? So, say that someone's moving into a new leadership role. What kind of things do they need to think of as far as inclusivity, especially managing a team?
Absolutely. Inclusion is tangible and intangible. I've always said that if you want to go quick, go alone. But if you want to go far, you take others with you. And leadership embodies the importance of empowering one another to be the best version of ourselves. And that's inclusion, to think proactively rather than reactively when it comes to an inclusive space, an inclusive environment, seeing people for our abilities and what we can do versus the latter. And when we empower, when we think positively, and when we think inclusively, we are certainly being leaders in the futures that we want to cultivate.
Definitely. And that kind of goes into my next question on stereotypes. I know when I started my research for my doctoral, I had to take a human resources class and that sort of thing. And coming from the military myself, I know a lot of people stereotypes different people. And I think that was a good chance for me to get into that melting pot of the military because I had been kind of siloed. I grew up in Alaska and then grew up in a small town in Texas before I went into the military. But being dropped into that melting pot of all these different races and cultures and backgrounds was kind of a shock at first, but then I became a leader in there and I had to kind of manage all those stereotypes. So what is something that leaders need to use to manage those stereotypes going forward and making sure that people aren't stereotyping others?
Absolutely. And it's really about alleviating the attitudinal barriers and amplifying the education behind the vast diversity that we have in this world. I can speak to the disability community. There's over 1.1 billion people worldwide that identify as members of the disability community. And, we're the largest minority group. Disability is the only demographic that has a fluctuation rate. Disability could happen to anyone at any time, situationally, temporary, permanently. I mean, the list goes on and on. So speaking to what I just spoke about earlier, about proaction rather than reaction, it really satisfies a win for everybody when we think inclusion in the proactive sense.
Yeah, and I think we all know that veterans, there's a large disabled veteran community out there.
Absolutely.
And I think there's some stereotypes to that. You hear, oh, I'm 100%. We kind of rank ourselves by our rating. And so someone will say, well, I'm 100% disabled, or I'm 20% disabled. And I think a lot of people assume, oh, when someone says they're 100% disabled, well, they can't work or they can't go out and do things that other people can do. And it could be that their disability is not visible one. And that's why they're at that rating. But I've had to do it myself, and say, well, oh, just because they're that rating doesn't mean they can't do certain things. And I mean, you're a testament to that. That just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't do something.
Yeah, and thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. For me, creating Above and Beyond was important to amplify the message within the disability community within Hamilton, where I live, which rates larger than the provincial and national averages. We wanted to eradicate the the mindset that disability is negative. We wanted to eradicate the attitudinal barriers. We wanted to amplify the message that disability is something that needs to be more addressed in the positive sense. When I'm speaking to whether it be businesses or classrooms, I speak to what I call the MICE principles, which is motivation, innovation, inspiration, celebration, education, and empowerment. And for me, those MICE principles are the guiding light of what I do and the man that I represent and the man that I represent to other business, to other communities. Because again, it's really about symbolizing the fact that we're all people first and that we deserve to be treated with integrity, dignity, and respect.
Definitely. And I think we could probably do an episode on each one of those.
Absolutely.
Going forward. So when you're not at your full-time job, you're working with the Forward movement. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, in the US, it's called the Accessible Icon Project. It came from Sweden by way of Denmark to the US by way of a design that wanted to transition the mindset of an image of the stagnant person who's sitting in a wheelchair to a more of a proactive, a moving person. And the wheelchair is insignificant to the photo. It's about the moving forward. So the Forward Movement is an organization founded by Dylan Nitzikowicz and Jonathan Silver that I came on board after seeing a friend of mine in an Instagram post. I asked him, what's this about? And can I contact Dylan and Jonathan? Long story short, I contacted them and we got it approved in Hamilton here. And we have it approved in many municipalities in Ontario. And we're looking to get it provincially legislated as the new symbol for accessibility and inclusion. It's a more, as I said, it's a more proactive approach. It's a more forward-moving image to depict the ability rather than the stagnancy.
Definitely, it's got the guy or the person in the wheelchair is kind of like leaning forward, and they got their arms like they're pumping the wheels there. And I think I've seen the one for like you said, there's one in the United States that's more in motion than the stagnant, just sitting there. I'd like to. So my full-time job, I'm a facility manager or facility director for an organization, and so I'm in charge of all the painting of the parking lots and everything. So I'd like to make sure I include that on our next round of painting and make sure we can get that approved here. So I will look into that, and thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anything I can do to help, Jason, let me know.
Yeah. And then you also work with the Rick Hansen Foundation?
Yeah, so Rick Hansen sustained a spinal cord injury in the 70s as a result of a pickup truck accident coming home from a fishing trip. So from 1985 to 1987, he decided that he wanted to create his Man in Motion tour. So he wheeled 26 months over 34 countries, over 40,000 wheel strokes to create awareness for accessibility and inclusion and awareness towards spinal cord injury. In 1988, he opened his foundation, the Rick Hansen Foundation. I got involved in 2006, going to Wheels in Motion events, which is essentially not a competition, but it's essentially an event where individuals who are doing tasks of daily living, but from the seated position of a wheelchair, to see what the difference is. So we've done that from 2016 to 2010. And in 2011, we created his Man in Motion tour here in Canada. So I was part of recreating his Canadian leg of it. So I did portion of the tour myself and passed over a medal to another participant. And Rick has really built his legacy on accessibility, on inclusion, tangibly and intangibly, and ensuring that we're doing things right the first time rather than retrofitting accessibility. Because more often than not, when you retrofit, you're not exactly doing the right thing by accessibility. You're just trying to build to code. Whereas if you think accessibility from the beginning, you're essentially doing things right the first time, and it's actually cheaper in the long run. According to Rick's gold certification standard, the cost of accessibility and building accessibility into a building is 1% more to the actual cost, rather than retrofitting accessibility into a pre-existing build, which is significantly more.
Yeah, I can see that just from my background, how it would be different. The safety background that I have in the engineering and facility management. So we've talked a lot about adversity and that sort of, disability and getting through that. So one of your biggest quotes on your website is adversity not only builds character, but reveals it. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and why that's your favorite mantra?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So, we all face adversity. And, for me, the adversity that I face, is challenging in the sense that, you have to face the attitudinal barriers. You're facing different tangible barriers, but there's always a way to find a solution. Another quote that I use a lot is that in life, there are no problems, only solutions waiting to be found. And in saying that, the solutions that I have, the solutions that work for me, may look unorthodox to an uneducated eye, so to speak, but they are the solutions that work best for me. So, in essence, I'm essentially presenting a solution that may be a solution for someone else who is in a similar situation than me, with minor tweaks, so to speak.
All right, Anthony, if you had to have one leadership tip for someone, what would it be?
If you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, take others with you. Leaders are people who empower. Leaders are people that work with others. I believe in the power of allyship, and allyship is truly the fundamental systemic and culture that we need to implement to create a more sustainable future.
All right. If anyone had any questions or wanted to get a hold of you, how can we do that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. So they can reach me on my website at www.anthonyfrisina.ca, or they can email me info@anthonyfrisina.ca. Social media as well, just by my name, Anthony Frisina, or Above and Beyond Media. I've authored a book. I do a lot of acting as well, because I wanted to give the importance of representation, authentic and genuine representation to disability and disability inclusion. So I'm very much immersed in a lot of inclusionary components that give the authenticity to disability inclusion.
Great. And we'll put the links for all that down the show notes below, and a link to his book down there also, so you can get a copy of that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading Podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership inspired.